All right, so we're back once again. Nomics. Then I'm here, Denzel. Then we got Malcolm.
We both
What
here.
up? What up?
Yeah, we all here. Everybody, the whole gang is here. The whole
Whole
duo.
gang. First off, let me start off by saying, uh, all hail King Killmonger,
All hell, King Killmonger.
or in the
No,
chocolate.
no, no. Let's not say that. Hold on. Let's actually start this off. Let's start this off with the good parts about the movie. I
Okay,
want first
okay.
of all, we're gonna talk about Black Panther
All right,
because
yeah, we
obvious.
because we both saw it. Like, did you see it more than once?
Yeah, I saw it twice.
Yeah, I saw it twice too. And I ain't gonna lie, I stunned it like and bought my custom shit. I was fresh as fuck though. I don't give a fuck. But
Yeah,
like,
I ain't do all of that. Y'all was going
I
ham.
mean, yeah,
Y'all was
we
going ham.
did.
I went in regular ass clothes.
No, but I had to stunt. But now like so
I went as a native black.
yo.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Wait, uh anyway, anyway.
All right. Hold on, we gotta take a pause, y'all. All
Yeah. 'Cause
right.
all right. So
So,
yeah.
all
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
let's
Go ahead
talk
and
about
start off.
Black Panther. So let's talk about what was good about the movie.
Uh,
Um, it made white racist people mad. I watched a whole podcast earlier. I listened to a whole podcast earlier about how mad conservatives are getting about this movie and getting pissed off about it. And that's always good when
right.
you can make racist white people mad. That's always a plus in my book.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool. I mean, it's low hanging fruit, but I mean, hey,
Oh, to me, there's only low hanging fruit that's good for this movie.
right. I mean, like make some conservative.
I'll give the representationalists a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this
I'll
was
give them I'll
you know
give
this.
them a little bit.
Let's keep it 100. Like we did get to see a thorough representation of darker skinned black people. Um, like in the
On
movie,
screen in a big Hollywood production.
right? Like maybe a
Even though the
couple of
CGI was crap, but we
yeah,
won't
that's
talk
a
about
whole nother story.
it.
Whole nother story. But like,
Yo, you're
uh,
freezing. You're freezing, man.
I'm freezing.
Yeah.
Shit, I got this Ethernet in here. I don't know why it's still tripping. The internet here is terrible.
All right. Yeah, you're a little bit better now.
Okay. Um. Yeah, like I mean, black representation is a lot darker skin. I mean, only two white actors, but they still played some significant role. But that's another story. We'll get to that. Uh, I mean, what else? Like, I mean, fight choreography was decent. Shout out to Maurice Crump who did the choreography for that. Like, I follow him on Facebook. He's a dope martial artist. I mean, that was
Okay, I just
cool.
want to get into the movie because I actually had a question. Why did Ross even need to be in the movie?
All
You
right,
know,
okay, cool,
Claw,
cool.
Claw was essential because I know this is what you want to talk about anyway.
Yeah,
So let's just go
yeah.
straight to what you want to talk about.
First
Claw
off,
was essential to the movie. Claw is also one of Black Panther's like foremost nemesis. It's like Claw and Killmonger. That's the only
right.
two. That's his like two great. I mean, I guess the Great Eight, which was supposed to be in Baku, I guess
Yeah, yeah.
as well. But
They want to call him mayonnaise
really,
man.
it's Claw and Killmonger. Those are his two biggest villains. So
Right.
like Claw being in the movie, okay. But why did Ross need to be in the movie? I'm gonna just let you take it. I'm gonna let you take over.
Let's address this bullshit right now because this shit kind of got me hot. First
No, you
off,
you freezing. You freezing.
okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. because this shit got me mad. So, okay, you have this for those who may not remember. Ain't no fair ones. I'm gonna tell you what happened. Basically, you have this white CIA officer that got caught up during the movie when they captured Claw, and he got caught in the crossfire. He got critically injured, and the Wakandans were like, "Oh, we can save him. We can save him." And they took him back to Wakanda, and basically, he was just kind of like, or as some people say, he was just that quote unquote useless like side character that was just there, even though he's a part of the CIA in Wakanda. Now, keep in mind, people don't know outside of the Wakandans that it's an advanced civilization, like it has the most advanced technology on the
Froze
planet.
again.
Frozen? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, but like
Last
people,
thing we heard was people outside of Wakanda.
yeah, people outside of Wakanda don't know that like Wakanda is the most technologically advanced country on the planet. But you know, now that we have Agent Ross, random ass white CIA agent, going into Wakanda, he knows now. And if we know anything about the CIA, we know that they're clandestine as hell. And the moment he gets a glimpse of Wakanda and its technology and their way of life, he's reporting all of that back to his agency. Now keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Nonetheless, they have him play like this sort of like semi foil like character that's on the side. You know, they have a moment where they bark. You know, the Jabari tribe barks at him, tell him to shut up. Oh yeah, we telling the white man to shut up. That's radical. And then toward the end, when Killmonger, which by the way was trying to lead a global black revolution and arm like oppressed like diasporic populations, uh, Agent Ross was the one with the help of Shuri, where he was shooting down the ships that were trying to arm diasporic populations that were being systemically oppressed. So this is where my gripe is, right? Shout out to those liberals who see Agent Ross as an ally. Ally to what? I have no fucking clue. Because apparently some people view this CIA agent as an ally to some people's notion of black liberation. So let me ask you something. Even in a fictional world, right? What type of black liberation could possibly be like created with the help of a CIA agent? Like, I can't think anything because otherwise,
I did. You froze again with the help of a what?
can you hear me now?
You, yeah, I think.
Am I good now?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me,
No.
please. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Somebody, like, please, maybe you know something that I don't. Like, I'm trying to envision some type of black liberation that involves the help of some random white CIA officer. Like, I can't think of it. People keep talking about this black liberation where he's an ally. I'm like, what is this? I've never heard
Well,
no shit like that.
well, I think you have to fundamentally. It goes to a deeper question about the movie, and you know, okay, there are always two sides to a story. So any story you tell, so like for instance, like if you want to tell the story of, let's say you tell the story of the Civil War. Even
Okay.
that's not a good. No, that's not a good. That's not a good example. Um, let's tell the story of um, like if you tell the story of like Osama bin Laden, right?
Okay.
everyone in the United States sees Osama bin Laden as a villain. But there are a lot of people in the Muslim Arab world who would not see Osama bin Laden as a villain and would see the United States as a villain. And I think, rightfully so. So the question always, there's that episode of Homeland where I don't know if people are familiar with Homeland or not. Homeland is a story about a CIA officer who has bipolar and her exploits, crazy
Emotionally molester.
exploits throughout life. Have you been watching this latest season, by the way?
No, I haven't.
It's crazy. but I digress. So there's an episode where Saul, who is one also in the CIA, a director in the CIA, and he ends up being national security advisor now. But that's beside the point. Yeah, it's crazy. I told you. but so Saul actually gets kidnapped by the Taliban, and it shows him sitting there talking to the Taliban. Mind you, Saul is a Jewish guy too, so that makes a whole nother level of like
Right.
extra.
Right.
And you start to see why the Taliban is doing what they're doing, and it humanizes them in a way that mainstream media never really does. And you see kind of the plight of their people, and how they're fighting for a sort of liberation of those people against what they see as an imperialist power in America, which I wouldn't disagree with them. Um, and so, if they were to tell a story, the story would be much different than if Americans are to tell a story.
True.
They always say that history is just a story of the winner. The loser always saw you as the villain. The loser saw you as the evil person. We talk about the Nazis as the bad guys, but the Nazis didn't see themselves as bad people. Like, I mean,
Right.
and I mean, shoot, you could also say that we committed war crimes just as great as the Nazis, if
I
not greater.
mean, if if anything, we kind of created the Nazis. I mean, they kind of got the inspiration
exactly,
from Jim
exactly.
Crow.
So the narratives aren't so linear or
Binary.
easy to digest. It's
Yeah.
not easy to split. To use a psychology term, it's not easy to split things into being good or bad. And
Or
so
be a
I think
binary.
that's really what it comes down to when you talk about Agent Ross. Not only is it odd that he's like one of the only white characters in this, and everybody wants to talk about him as an ally. I didn't see much of that, honestly. I only saw a little bit of that, but that's just kind of wild to me.
It
But it's
wasn't there at all
also
for me.
down to who do you see as the hero and who do you see as the villain in this movie, right? To me, I left the movie theater the first time initially saying that Killmonger was the hero. I've softened on that stance so that he was the hero. I definitely am on his side of everyone in the movie, but I can't say the hero for reasons that we'll get into later. We'll break down Killmonger
Right.
and some of his flaws. But the question is, though, who is the villain? And I would say that Killmonger is not the villain. And I would honestly say that from the perspective of black people around this world, that the Wakandans are the villains. T'Challa is the villain. T'Chaka is
The
utmost the
real
villain.
villain. Yeah.
T'Challa is at least grappling with it, but he's only grappling with it, I think, in so much as he's just coming to learn the full scope of things as he comes into his kingdom. Uh, and he's also forced and pushed to it by two things. One, his want for Nakia's pussy to stay in Wakanda, let's just keep it 100. Let's just keep it 100. He's
Yeah, let's keep
motivated
it
by two
100.
things: Nakia and Killmonger coming there and killing him. Basically,
Right.
he motivated by those two things. Um, and so in terms of Black liberation, I saw a status on Facebook by a Jewish person who said that if there was some secret Jewish highly advanced state that could have stopped the Holocaust but stayed out of it, they wouldn't have enough middle fingers to give them. And that's the sentiment I came out the movie with. That's the
Yeah.
sentiment I came out of the movie with. Like, you know what, F Wakanda. And the comic book of Black Panther, though Wakanda is still the same, uh, that Black Panther is a little bit different.
But not that
Maybe
much.
not a whole lot, but a little bit different. But this one, we only talking about this in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I've seen a lot of people try to argue with me from stuff from the comic books, which I have read, stuff from different animated series, which I've read or seen, and you got to hold it to one universe.
Right.
I'm only talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe right now. That's all we're talking about.
Because let's
And
keep
in
it
that
100.
universe, they sat there and said, I mean, this is the level. I've seen a lot of people. I've seen this counter argument to Wakanda not being um, very nationalist, uh, very much Trump esque. I mean, there are lines said by Okawe and Wakabe that could come right out of a "Make America Great Again" rally. I mean, these refugees come in, they bring the refugees problems,
Yep.
and or I forget what the line about Kawe was, but anyway, she had one. She had a couple too. Um, and so people have tried to say, well, they had to hide from they had to hide from white supremacy so that they wouldn't be touched by it like everybody else was. So you can't judge them in the same way that you would any other nation because they are a black nation, even though I would argue that they're not a black nation because blackness is only defined in juxtaposition to whiteness. Blackness is a construct. Blackness is a construct that exists to be juxtaposed and compared to and foiled off of whiteness, such that whiteness can be higher on the hierarchy and blackness can be subordinate on that hierarchy. There is no other thing about blackness. There is no other like justification of blackness. There's no biological justification of blackness. That race. I mean, that's what I want a lot of people to just go back and do your research about race. I mean, race is a relatively new human phenomena of 500 to 600 years. I mean, so I would argue if there is no whiteness within the Wakandans, they aren't black, really, in the sense that in the real ontological sense of black of what blackness kind of is.
Yeah, they don't have that understanding of the world, like because their like worldview is not impacted by colonialism. They don't have that sense
Well,
of
no, I would argue that blackness and whiteness and race are contextual, such that like Fanon talks about this like people you don't like if I stayed in my house all day and like didn't watch TV or didn't do anything, right? And say I had a white person in my house, but like we didn't watch TV, we had never interacted with the outside world, we wouldn't be white and black. We would just be human beings. And this is not to go on a humanist slant, but it's to say that like your race is determined by your context, right? So like Slavic people aren't necessarily like Slavic people in Europe aren't really necessarily white. But if a Slavic person comes to America, like if a gypsy were to come to America, they're going to be white, right? And so I always argue for this idea that race is contextual, right? I mean, there are certain contexts in which and I'm fairly dark skinned, not super dark, but I'm not light skinned by any means. I mean, but there's certain contexts in like Latin America where I could go and be considered like in the Dominican Republic, I could be, or is it the Dominican Republic? There's certain contexts where I could be considered mulatto. I could be considered even there's certain contexts where dark skinned people are considered white, which is weird to me coming from the American context of race. But
Right.
I mean, race to me is completely contextual. So once Wakandans contextualize themselves within Wakanda, they aren't black. Like, I
I'd go
mean,
even farther, and I'd say they probably don't even have a conception of race. Like, I mean, like they're
yeah, I mean,
isolated.
so, but I mean, so they shouldn't. But in the movie, they clearly do though, because they call him. She calls him a white. Suri calls him a white boy. Like, oh, you have another broken white boy for me to fix.
Right.
She calls them colonizer, right? They have the war dogs, which are outside. So they have interacted with the outside world to understand race to a point. But I would argue that like the average Wakandan within Wakanda doesn't view themselves as black. Um, but this is all, I kind of digressed and forgot what my kind of point was. My point is to say that, okay, I remember. My point is to say that at the time that the North Atlantic slave trade was occurring, Wakanda put themselves in a force field to
Right.
hide. And so I've seen an argument that they shouldn't, that you can't judge them in the same way because they were hiding from white supremacy. Now, I just want to put this in some historical context. I know this is a fictional movie, but let's just act like it's real and let's put this in historical context. You are telling me that people that had the technology to create a force field that hid them were afraid of people with muskets that did not even have rifling.
Right. And let's be
That's
honest.
what that's the argument that you're really trying to make to me. And
And
for
let's
people
be
that don't
honest.
understand guns, rifling is the spiraling of the inside of the barrel so that air can flow around in a circular motion, causing the bullet to spin so that the bullet actually hits its target. Pre like somewhere around in the 1800s, because I don't even think in the Civil War rifle muskets had rifling.
Right.
Somewhere in the like late or late 1800s, people created rifling. Before that, that's why you had the type of fighting and just like sitting in lines, because you could literally aim right at somebody and the musket ball could spin off in some other direction and not even hit what you were aiming at, right?
Right.
This is what the innovation of rifling caused you to be able to really truly aim and the bullet to be able to fly in a straight trajectory. So you're telling me that people that had the technology to create a force field were somehow afraid of people with rifling. I mean, this is why I think we get into levels of almost absurdity or levels of
Yeah.
disingenuous arguments, right? So it's the same thing you see in the type of Wakanda Forever, or we're all going to Wakanda. But within the context of the movie, nobody was allowed in Wakanda. Not even black people. I mean, not even they called Killmonger an outsider, and he was technically Wakandan, right? And so the idea to me from all these black people, especially black people, American black people, that they are Wakandan, we are Wakandan, everybody's Wakandan, but you're not Wakandan within the context of this fictionalized construct. And that's why I've been saying that like black people are so far gone and we're so far wanting to escape ourselves that we are living in metafiction. And so for people who don't know what meta is, this means this is just a fucking Greek word for about.
So like fiction within fiction.
Yeah, so it's just fiction of fiction.
Right.
Fiction about fiction. Because not only do you want to go to Wakanda and live in Wakanda and Brandon, and you wish that there was no white supremacy, and you wish that these things didn't happen, you wish that there was a black nation that could rule itself and blah 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 and wasn't touched by colonialism and all of this historical revisionism that you wish had happened, but it's not the reality of our timeline. It's just not. Not only that, even within this fictionalized historical revision, you still have a fictionalized understanding of it, in that you could be Wakandan. You're not Wakandan. You can't be Wakandan. Even I'm not even saying that Wakanda's not real. Let's assume it is. You're still not Wakandan.
And but here's the other thing that blows my mind too. Like that, even in that fictional universe, there are like a lot of the actual historical timeline remained intact, i.e., like the transatlantic
Hold on,
slave trade.
breaking up. You broke up.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like one thing that I think a lot of people ignore, even in the fictional universe, is that a lot of the our actual historical timeline remained intact. Transatlantic slave trade still happened. So like they're pretending like so in this fictional universe where they're pretending like you know I want to be Wakandan, like you're legit saying fuck my identity. I want to go be like Wakanda, even though you clearly still exist in this fictional universe. Like your historical context is still intact. There's still African Americans. There's still descendants of slaves. Yet even in this fictional universe, you're like, I want to be over there. And to me, I think that was so weird to me that people were like that. Like, I mean, I'm just like, is this a function of you just not having any idea of the Marvel universe and how it works? Or is it kind of what you were saying, how like people are just being so disingenuous that they're getting into this sort of like meta escapism, right? You're escaping within the escapism, and it's like I
Yeah.
don't know.
I mean,
It's
that's
like
how I view it. I view it as that like African Americans don't want to be African American, and so they'll
now here's
go
the
through. And by
here,
African American, I mean Native blacks, like descendants of slaves. They don't want to be African American, and they'll go through all types of mental hurdles and mental hoops and mental gymnastics in order to figure out some way to not be that.
and here's the flip side of this though. Now, one of the things I did have to think about when I was thinking about this, I was like, okay, I I might be in a bubble. I got to put myself in context and look at the people who are saying these things and realize that this might not be the
You froze.
larger opinion. I'm here. Can you hear me?
You froze. Last thing we heard was realize.
Hello.
Yeah, the last
Okay.
thing we heard was realize.
So one of the things that I had to take a step back and realize was, okay, maybe I'm observing a bubble. Maybe this is a certain group of people that hold this opinion that are engaging in this metafiction. Because like one thing that I've noticed, and I'm not saying this is like a clean trend. Obviously, there's going to be people that don't fit this, but I noticed that like a lot of the people who are sitting here talking about like Wakanda forever and and we're like, oh, I'm Wakanda and I'm not anything else. We're middle class, like educated, bougie people. Like these were mostly
Yeah.
people like that were like, yeah. And it was interesting because somebody we know had made a parallel when they were talking about Killmonger and Wakanda's complicity in creating Killmonger. She said that
You
Wakanda.
froze again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
What was the last thing you heard?
Somebody we know had made a parallel.
Somebody, oh yeah, somebody we know had made a parallel between Wakanda and the Talented Tenth, because here you have Wakanda, this group of, if for the sake of this argument, well-off Black people, well-resourced African people who are just off on their own, sitting comfortably. Meanwhile, while the rest of the diaspora, both within and without and outside of the continent, suffer. And she made a parallel saying that like Wakandans in some ways can be seen as like those marginally well-off Black people that are complicit in like creating the suffering that causes a Killmonger to happen. Um, and I
Yeah,
just
I can see that, but I think if you're talking, I can see that parallel, but I think they're even see those people are still shaped by and under uh, a context of white supremacy. The Wakandans, right at the end of the day, white supremacy is all about slavery, racism. These all things that are done through force
right,
and then controlled in many other ways. But at the very first thing it came to down was force. And so once you take that imbalance away and say that the Wakandans actually have a greater deal of force, then to me they're outside the context of white supremacy. So I mean, they're worse to me than the talented tenth. It's not really a it's not so much a parallel as like they're like, okay, yeah, I guess I could see the parallel, but to me, they're worse. It's a step above because at least the talented tenth still it's not as though the talented tenth has the power to usurp white supremacy. They have made a decision under a context of white supremacy to be in a very liberal notion about themselves and to fuck all else. Uh, the Wakandans to me, not necessarily under a context of white supremacy, but just at a level of true equality, or even really they were
superiors.
superior
Yeah,
in terms of not in terms of like biology, but just in terms of
technology.
resources and technology and whatnot, in a superior position, just chose not to do anything. So yeah, I view the Wakandans as just worse, to be quite honest
I guess
with
you
me.
could make that argument simply because they were observing all this shit. Like they observed, they were watching all of this go down. Like and like to me, I guess where it really hit me. I mean, it should have hit me when I realized that they watched the transatlantic slave trade happen. But another part of me, like it really hit me too when I started thinking about like the late 20th century. Because you mean to tell me Wakanda sat and watched not only certain like leaders in America get assassinated, but they also saw certain leaders like in within the continent get assassinated and did nothing. So like Patrice Lumumba, um,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, they
I
saw all of this
like
happen and did absolutely nothing. And I don't think from the way that it was flowing about the information, I don't think that the average Wakandan, because at the end of the day, T'Challa didn't even know all to the extent, right? So I think it was really kept to the High Council, the King, the High Council. They were really the only ones who were getting the information back from the war dogs in terms of what was going on. I don't really necessarily think that the entire population knew
Oh no, they
what's
didn't. This is
going on.
definitely, yeah. I definitely think you can like strictly blame this on like the Wakandan elite, the Wakandan royalty. Like this is all information that they're privy to from what we saw in the movie. It just seemed like Wakandans was just like the average Wakandan was just a regular ass citizen that benefited from advanced technology. But I mean, it didn't seem from what we saw. It didn't seem like they didn't have much to engagement. I mean, because we didn't really get to see their reaction
We didn't
when
even really get to see the average Wakandan, which is something that was interesting to me because a lot of people tried to argue to me that, oh, well, T'Challa, well, everyone loved him. He was a benevolent king, therefore there's no issue with the monarchy. And what I try to point out to people was that there really is no, excuse me, if you really study tyranny, there is no such thing as benevolent tyranny.
right,
And people will say, well, they could challenge for the throne. But I mean, one, the king had to accept your challenge. That was very
right,
well set up and stated that the king had the choice to accept or to not accept your challenge. First of all, yeah, that may lead to some political issues, but he had the choice whether to accept or to not accept your challenge. There was still this idea of bloodline lineage, right? Because why did it then pass on to T'Challa from T'Chaka? Um, Also, I don't know exactly how people try to say that it was all like fair. I'm not sure how fair any of that ritual was. Um, the
in
ritual
what way was
combat
that
really.
fair?
I say this because okay, yes, he was stripped of the powers of the Black Panther, but he was the Black Panther, so he probably had, you know, like if you're a king and you want your son to then be king, you're training him from birth to be king
Right,
and to be a Black Panther. He's around the top warriors in the nation from birth.
right,
So you're telling me that somehow someone who is, it's very much the same thing that, Yvette and Antonio talk about in terms of like how Steph Curry is one of the greatest shooters ever, but his dad is Del Curry, right? Or how
right.
Bill Gates was able to do what Bill Gates, Microsoft, and his dad is an IP attorney. It's very much like your dad is king, your dad is the greatest warrior in the land. He's protected by the greatest warriors in the land. You grow up around the greatest warriors in the land, and then they say, well, you could challenge for the throne in ritual combat. That doesn't seem like a fair challenge to me, personally.
I mean,
And so I'm just trying to point out to people that, that in some ways the Wakandan Empire was, or the Wakandan nation was retrograde and backwards in that they had and that they had this monarchy and that it had to be tyranny and that they had to be you can't tell me, regardless of how much vibranium that they had, that there wasn't some type of class issues, right? And I know I said we don't want to I just wonder why the Jabari, they never went into that. They just said that the Jabari had an issue with them.
right.
I always wonder, why did the Jabari have an issue with them? Was it just over traditionalists? I mean, But you saw, yeah, okay, the Jabari looked to be a little bit more traditional. But then when you went into where the Jabari were, they seem to have technology too, though. They
Right.
weren't not using vibranium either. Like,
I think that was a huge plot hole. And then also too, another thing I thought about was when they did the challenge, those people didn't seem to represent the average Wakandan. So it didn't seem like the average Wakandan could say, "Hey, I want to try to fight for the throne." It just seemed like a certain group.
no. The tribes had to put up one person that was probably decided by whoever their their representative on the high council was, right? Because you saw it was the members of the high council who were saying, we're not gonna, we won't challenge, we won't challenge, we won't challenge.
So it
Right, so
was,
it almost seemed as though that was all just kind of a formality and kind of just a show.
yeah. I mean, it just seemed like it was so. It was kind of like a sort of pluralism amongst the elite.
Yeah. But let's go on to another point. So let's get on to Killmonger.
Right. So let's start off. Let's go ahead and get this out of the way. The elephant. Let's address this argument about him having some degree of misogynoir because of the people he took out in the movie. I want you to go first.
Uh,
Let's just get that out the way, because like that that has been bothering me for a multitude, like multiple reasons.
I
Like
just want to read. Hold on, let me just read. I don't even really want to speak on that. Like, I
I mean,
mean,
understandably,
let me just read this Tommy Curry post, and then that should be all we say about
yeah,
that. It's
yeah.
ridiculous. The arguments in masculinity studies suggest that the disproportionality of subordinate males is linked to the maintenance of patriarchy and preservation of female life. The responses to Killmonger demonstrate that the supposed morality that Killmonger violated was not misogyny, but gender equality. In being the villain, he disposed of black female life the same way he disposed of black male life. This is what is so offensive to the audience. When it comes to women, as a society, we celebrate their representation in positions of power like warriors, but the deaths of warriors are positions largely reserved for poor or triumphant men. What many of these woke analyses are suggesting is that we should love the Dormilaje for their possession of weapons and fighting skills, but should not want to see any of them die in combat or be killed for being killers. Yet there has not been one mention of the problems concerning the multiple deaths of black men in the movie. Why? Because black male bodies and lives are disposable. In patriarchal societies, we are used to the killing of black men and boys. We are so numb to the implications of a black man killing his brother to build Wakanda, or a black man getting stabbed and thrown off a cliff, and a black male having a spear lodged in his chest for the audience to see and then removing it himself committing suicide. None of these acts are anti black because they are normal. We don't flinch at the deaths of males, but the one black female killed is the basis of endless attacks on the character, the director, and other black men who do not embrace their own disposability. Tommy Curry.
Well,
Professor John Tommy J. Curry, writer of The Man Not. Great book. You all should go pick it up. I haven't finished it. I'm bad at finishing books. I read like half of them. I shouldn't
that's
admit that to people.
absolutely insane that you just and
But
as you
but
told me that shit, like, oh, I saw another ridiculous. Well, I won't say ridiculous. I would say a reduction. Saw another a reductionist analysis of Killmonger that somebody tagged me to, and I'm just kind of like, okay.
well, what was it? Let's discuss it. Let's discuss it.
So
Let's have
let's look at it.
dialogue.
All right. So they said this was a woman that said, "We've all dated a killmonger. We've all dated a boy with no daddy and a mama not worth mentioning. We've all tried to heal him, become a notch on his belt, on his skin, a sign where he killed us just a little bit, would rather use us as a weapon than shield us. We've all licked our lips to bad boys whose sole
But
ambition was to destroy the world around us."
I can't hear. I did. I missed the middle part after the notch on the belt.
Okay. Or on his skin, a sign where he killed us just a little bit, would rather use us as a weapon than shield us. We've all licked our lips to bad boys whose sole ambition was to destroy the world around us. I just feel like
Um.
I feel like they're projecting it. Let's just keep it 100. I feel like people are projecting certain
Yeah.
qualities
I mean,
onto
I don't
Killmonger
really know what.
that has no parallel to the fucking movie. First off, there was no evidence beyond.
Yeah, I don't
Let's
really know what that
let me
particular
just put it.
person.
I'm gonna just look. First off, let's address the first part. The girl who got killed at the beginning. Okay, only thing that we know is that there was she was somebody who was his love interest. She was a conspirator. And when Claw held her hostage, she said, "I'm sorry." Killmonger captured. What's very interesting about this is that immediately they go, "Oh yeah, she was disposable, blah blah blah. He was disposable." Somebody brought up a very interesting point. They said, "How do we not know that she was not so down for the cause that she was willing to give her life up herself?" And that whole scene could have been interpreted differently. So I feel like that scene by itself, first off, is really open ended enough to where you could project your own narrative about that story and to make it fit whatever your point was. Because the fact is, it was highly underdeveloped. We don't know shit about this woman except for she helped him with the heist, and she
Well,
was
my
like,
issue with it is that there's always this added. I think this is what Tommy Curry is talking about. There's always this added like responsibility to not kill a woman or to not kill the black woman. I mean, Killmonger clearly said, "I've killed hundreds. You saw all the kills on his body. I've killed
right,
all these people to get to this point, right?" And so to go back to what you had just read, her her idea that Killmonger's point is to just destroy the world. I think that's where we misconceive his notions and his motivations. Everyone to me has called him selfish. I don't see where the selfishness is in the movie. Everyone says that he just wanted revenge. Okay, but if he just wanted revenge, then why didn't he just burn Wakanda down? Right?
right,
We've seen villains who just want revenge.
right,
Right? Why didn't he just come there? Right? When he came to the throne, before he even called T'Chaka a murderer, right? He said that there are a billion people around here just like you. Where have y'all been? He said that before he started calling out his blood lineage and stuff.
right,
When he killed after he killed T'Chaka, and T'Chaka cheated multiple times.
oh, T'Challa, yeah,
T'Challa cheated multiple times. But after he damn near killed him, he comes into the throne room after being coronated and says, "Where were you guys? There's a whole lot of people who live much more difficult lives. And where was Wakanda?" So I don't understand. I think I've seen a lot of odd interpretations of this movie in which I almost, I've seen people say when people say that T'Challa cheated, and they're like, "What do you mean he cheated? I don't see anywhere where he cheated." And I'm like, well, Forrest Whitaker's character Zuri not only interfered with him dying, the Jabari interfered with him dying. His sister and mother then fed him the herb that healed him, gave him his suit back. I mean, what are you talking like? But there are people literally ask me if we watch the same movie, and I'm like,
It's
apparently we
disingenuous.
didn't. Apparently we didn't. And so this is to where I get to this odd psychological manipulation that people have, in which they want to see T'Challa and the Wakandans as the heroes so great that they are willing to distort the actual fiction that was on the screen. And I think it's wild because I think in order for us to actually, and this is in real life now, in order for us to actually have some type of true black liberation, we have to first understand the problem, right? And so if you watch a movie like that and you don't understand that T'Challa was the villain and that maybe Killmonger wasn't the hero, right? Because maybe he was taking it a step too far, in which he wanted his own imperialization, right? And maybe it's taking it a step too far, right? In that he didn't have the correct revolutionary education to understand that you can't replace the current structure with the new structure, with the same structure, just with different people leading it,
Right.
right? But at the same time, to not understand that what he was trying to overthrow was the villainous structure, and to then create these psychological and mental gymnastics and adjustments to the actual story in order for you to see T'Challa and to see honestly white supremacy as the hero. I just
Right.
don't understand it. And until we can watch fiction and understand how it relates to the real world, I mean, we are completely lost.
Well, I mean, to be honest, if you really want to be honest, I feel like people's distorted view of what happened is a direct reflection of their distorted politics. Because I was sitting here thinking, like, a lot of people were drawing this parallel between Killmonger and Nakia, and at first I kind of like said, oh, okay, okay, but then now that I think about it, that's a false parallel. Like, because if you think about what she was doing, like Killmonger made it explicitly clear he was trying to to weaponize and empower like the diaspora so that they can be overthrown. Even though Nakia makes some mention about like refugee programs, outreach programs to help those who need it. And the argument that I've seen people make was, oh well, she was helping those girls at the beginning, so it's implied that she also wanted to help the diaspora too. And I'm like, no, you can't make that conclusion because if you go to the end of the movie, she played a huge influence in T'Challa going to the UN to open up Wakanda. That doesn't necessarily translate to helping the diaspora at all. I mean, and like it just let me know like you clearly don't understand the distinction between what Killmonger was trying to overthrow and what Nakia was doing. Nakia was not a revolutionary. Like
No,
she
Rakia was at most she was a reformist,
yeah,
but I mean, but then she wasn't even a good one at that, right? Because to me, if she really cared, see, I think this is where people have to understand where their power lies. So sure, she was a spy and all of this stuff and whatnot, and so she would go out and do all of these missions to help small groups of people. But if what she really wanted was for Wakanda to reach out, and she is the king's love interest, that's where your power is.
yeah,
Your power isn't in going out and doing one-off spy missions and saying that somehow that making that be your 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 justification for, or that you're somehow doing good, because you could exact influence on a much larger scale by influencing this one person who seems to be very influenced by you, right? So to me, my issue with her is that instead of operating politically, she wanted to operate in some odd, non-revolutionary way of, I don't know, going on missions and helping a few dozen people at a time. And I mean, but it's like if Harriet Tubman were to have run the Underground Railroad, but she could have in a very easy way, and I don't know any way that this would have happened, but let's just say that it could have easy way affected the politics such that the slaves would have been free. But she chose not to do that. She chose to do the Underground Railroad instead. Noble, but not really a noble
Not as
action,
effective.
but not a noble choice. Right? And so that's my issue with Nikia is that she should have been staying there trying to change T'Challa's mind rather than going out trying to do spy missions. And then also, I don't think that she ever wanted anything other than to do outreach, just quote unquote better than the other nations that do outreach.
She literally, and that's the part that blew my mind. I'm like, how can y'all sit up here and paint her as like this person that has some like alternative, like restorative approach to revolution? She literally said she wanted to like copy the model that most countries have with refugee programs and outreach programs, but just do it better. Like, and I'm just sitting here like, how can y'all and to kind of shift back and forth between this universe and the real world? How can y'all sit up here and say you have an issue and say that Nakia is a revolutionary, but then you have an issue with like certain white outreach programs for black people? Or how
Exactly.
can, like how can you say, oh yeah, well like Boys and Girls Club or whatever, that ain't revolutionary, but then you gonna say hers is? She's just doing her shit, but in Wakanda. And people were really like thinking that the whole um like STEM program that they did at the end was really gonna do some shit. Like, first off, it'll start off noble, whatever. They'll get some kids. They'll get some kids. They might even get some to do marginally well in their own lives. But I mean, we're completely ignoring how shit actually works. People. It's gonna get attention. White people are
Yeah,
gonna find a way to
my whole thing
gentrify the
is that
area.
I just have an issue with charity to begin with, and that charity doesn't empower. Right?
Right.
Charity holds power of whoever is the giver, and then makes them like it doesn't unless you're moving politically to change the structure to give people ownership, political representation, political power, and economic power such that they can defend themselves and honestly weaponry power in order for them to defend themselves, defend their quote unquote property if you believe in property rights, defend their property, defend their ideals, defend their ideas, try to make something of themselves, then you're not really changing the structure at all. You're trying to keep the structure the same, but make yourself feel better about it.
Right. And that's the entire point. Like, I mean, at best, you could say that she wanted, like, I mean, she kind of had a savior complex and just wanted Wakanda to,
That's how I see it.
that's all it was. Like, okay, we'll give y'all some STEM programs, and here's the thing that also bothers me about this: people conveniently like ignore the fact that the implications of T'Challa opening up Wakanda to the world. Like, y'all are sitting here talking about like, oh yeah, we need to empower the diaspora, but what Killmonger doing wasn't it? I'm like, okay, so y'all realize that by opening up Wakanda to the rest of the world, that lends the possibility of these countries further suppressing these people just with better technology. Like, but you know, some I mean, and people would just circumnavigate that conclusion. Like, no one wanted to respond to that. I'm like, you realize that didn't do anything. They're like, yeah, it's not perfect, but just Killmonger's way wasn't it? I'm like, okay, so y'all are telling me that the white CIA officer is an ally. Killmonger, the dude who was actually the revolutionary that wanted to overthrow this power structure, was wrong. But you agree with what the problem was. But Nakia, the one with the savior complex, the one that wanted to do like like nationwide macro charity, had the right idea. No power has been redistributed. People still like suppressing these populations, but charity's gonna fix the problem. Like,
That's principally because people aren't. This is liberate. This is why I said I made the status saying that I understand why Harriet Tubman. People don't know Harriet Tubman kept a pistol when she was going on her trips through the Underground Railroad, and no, I always used to think like they always talked about how she had a gun, and I always used to think that she had a gun to try to kill white people on the way. But no, the whole operation was supposed to be stealth. They weren't supposed to run into any white people. Or if they did run into white people, they were white people who were on the Underground Railroad who were supposed to be helping them. She kept a pistol because there were times in which there were certain black people who would get scared, scared of the unknown, scared of liberation, scared of their freedom. And so they wanted to go turn back. But if they turned back, they would end up either they would straight up tail or their turning back would put at danger or risk everybody who was trying to go to freedom. So she either had to threaten them with the pistol or in some instances actually had to kill them.
yep.
Right? And I never really understood it as clear as I understand it now. And that some people are so afraid of what it takes to get to liberation, right? And I think this is where people need to read people like Fanon. Um, I haven't finished reading all of his works, but I've started. I've read many secondary, or I've looked at a lot of secondary kind of texts and lectures on his works. And one thing that he talks about, and this is only one thing, and people try to reduce Fanon to this, so I shouldn't do that, but I'm going to. But one thing that he talks about is revolutionary violence and how white supremacy and the system of white supremacy is so violent, right? The system of domination is so violent that the only response to it is violence. And Fanon was actually completely against violence. He did not like violence, but he understood it, I think, as a necessary, you could say necessary evil, but at least just a necessary occurrence to move out of the dominated state. And so I see a lot of people who they want to be able to get to liberation by NGOs. They want to be able to get to liberation by charity. Um, and I have the fundamental belief that that's not going to occur. I think we see that in if you look at the Civil War, right? That institution took a large war to be gotten rid of, and then it still lingered in various other forms for
Right.
another like 50 years. Right? And
Like,
so I think that a lot of people are scared of revolution, right? I think that's what scared people about Killmonger too. A lot of
yeah.
people are scared as to what it will actually take to be liberated. And I fundamentally believe that it is going to take violence, right? And so I think there's a lot of people, black people included, who like You know, they say how back in the civil rights era that a lot of black people didn't like King, a lot of black people didn't like Malcolm X, a lot of black people didn't like these revolutionaries because they said that they were stirring up trouble for them. And you know, this is the best my life is ever gonna get, and I'm comfortable and I'm happy, and you know,
Exactly.
I've accepted this, right? And so please don't do that because you may make it worse.
However,
Please
on the
don't.
flip side,
Yeah.
on the flip side, should there be any advancement made by these revolutionaries, whether it's marginal
Those
or
people are right there
structural,
to take it.
they're right there to take it. They're right there to take it, and
They're right there to take it.
that's why, like, even for me, I have to just be mindful of how I like contextualize some of these opinions, and particularly around like a Killmonger type, because like that's really what he did. He made people uncomfortable. He showed them the uncomfortable truths. And one of the things that people really don't want to get into is, like you said, that there is not going to be some clean cut, like, revolution is messy. Like, there are people who impede on liberation, and they either need to get out of the way or be dealt with. Case in point, Harriet Tubman. But some people have the audacity to get mad when someone made that comparison. And I'm like, you mean to tell me if you actually studied Harriet Tubman's life and what she did in depth, and you would tell me that people like Harriet Tubman, Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, Gabriel Prosser,
Who?
huh?
You broke up
Would you like to hear?
after Harriet Tubman.
I was saying, you think people like Harriet Tubman, Denmark Vesey, Gabriel Prosser, uh, like Toussaint Louverture, like Zumbi Dos Palmares, Queen of the Marine, like Nanny of the Maroons, like all of them. You think all of them gonna sit up here and be like, yeah, nah, like, Nakia, we just take a more charitable approach? No, these people were all defined by like fighting, utilizing violence in order to seek liberation. And like, but somehow people can't make that comparison. People will sit up here and talk about how great Harriet was, how great these people were, and then turn around and scoff at Killmonger.
Because I think we do a disservice in history when we actually teach these people about when we actually teach about these people and what they did or what they didn't do. And this goes for both whites and blacks. This goes just for everyone.
Everybody, yeah.
No one, no one really knows. No one really understands. You know, I think we at an hour, we're approaching an hour, so we probably need to wrap this up.
Okay.
But or we might. I think we over an hour actually.
Yeah.
Hey,
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 hey, hey.
hey! That's
Listen
just
to
fire.
him. Listen to him. Oh, wait. I gotta be inclusive.
Who that? I can't see.
Nakia.
Wait, you froze.
You see it now?
Oh, that's Nakia. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Now this is your
You ain't take her out the packet. You're not inclusive.
here's your misogynoir. I couldn't find a 12-inch like Nakia, but I could find these two. Like, now, there go your shit. Like, shit. Like, I mean, I don't know. At the end of the day, all hell
Oh
Killmonger.
hell, kill Kingmonger. I
Like,
mean,
but
he. I mean, he was problematic, right? I mean,
yeah,
he
of
could
course,
have, as Irony said earlier, he could have almost been. He was probably on his way to being Papa Doc in
true.
Haiti. You know, most likely. Even though maybe he could have been changed for the better. But I'll use the same people telling me about. Wait till the next movie, or you know, wait till the
What's
next movie. Killmonger could have been better. You never know.
What blows my mind is like what's hilarious about all this is like when you read the comics, Nakia becomes Killmonger. So what's hilarious is people like, oh, she's the real hero, and I'm like, wait till her ass like flip and be like, nah, like we got to do the
But
same shit Killmonger do.
she's like completely different in the. She is like she's a Dora Milaje in the comics actually though.
Really?
Yeah,
So
and
she
she
can
has
actually
like
fight.
an obsession with she has an obsession with T'Challa, and then she ends up getting like kicked out, and then she ends up like meeting up with Killmonger and some other stuff, and then that's how she's kind of crazy. So her character is completely different, and her character is completely different
I
in the
would
movie
like.
than in the comics.
It would just
But
be really
the last
interesting.
thing I want to say though, last thing I want to say about this movie. uh, okay, there's two things I want to say. We need to, in terms of one, the first thing in terms of representation. Black people put the cart before the horse when we think about representation. And what I mean by this is that white people aren't in power, don't have political and economic power because they were represented in media.
Right.
They have political and economic power, and thus they have represented themselves in media. I think that we as black people look for representation in media to somehow change our material or structural position. And that is, and the causality there is backwards. If we were politically and economically empowered, we would create our representation, right? We would create characters, movies, and the such that were created by black people and black narratives. I mean, these characters are not created by black people. Let's just be
Right.
real. This movie, for all the success that it's having, and I'm glad that it's having success, is still only going to benefit white Disney executives and shareholders, really,
Right.
at the end of the day. So that's the first thing I want to say. Like that, we really need to start thinking about representation as an outgrowth of economic and political power instead of somehow political power being an outgrowth of representation. Second thing I want to say is in terms of okay, I'm going to talk about the comics, but I'm going to talk about the comics in relation to how they did and didn't portray black men in this movie. T'Challa, if you go, I want everyone who watches this go Google it so you know that I'm not lying. Go Google any list of the Marvel Universe's 10 smartest people. Any list you see of the 10 smartest people in Marvel Comics will include T'Challa. Every single one. T'Challa is on the same level of intelligence as Tony Stark, as Bruce Banner, as
Mr.
what's
Fantastic.
Hank's actual name? Hank the Beast, Hank whatever, the
Um,
Beast. Um
what about Mr. Fantastic?
Reed Richards. Reed
Yeah.
Richards is like supposed to be the smartest though. He's supposed to be the smarter than everybody. But Reed Richards, all these super genius level characters. Now, I brought this up, and people again have tried to post rationalize why this could be. Oh, this is only the first movie, and it could be different in the Avengers, and blah 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 blah. But I'll just tell you that in the very first Iron Man, the very first Iron Man, Tony Stark in the first 15 to 20 minutes of that movie creates, while he has shrapnel in his chest, creates a new element that has like limitless power, gets himself and gets while he's in captivity in a cave and gets himself out, builds a suit while the terrorists don't know, gets that suit fights his way out the cave and frees himself, and then goes on to go develop the Iron Man suit and all that stuff. Right? So
Right.
if people want to tell me that you can't develop or you can't assert someone's intelligence, you can't characterize a character as intelligence in a 2.5 hour movie, you're lying to me because Iron Man did it in the first 15 minutes of the movie.
Right.
And so I don't understand why, and you're lying to me because Shuri was intelligent, right?
Right.
Shuri was off the charts intelligent. Th- they put that characterization in the movie, right? But a black man cannot be intelligent. Both these two characters that you see here, T'Challa and Killmonger, are both above genius level intellect, right? I mean, it pissed me off that that Killmonger is supposed to have a PhD in mechanical engineering from MIT. PhD from MIT in mechanical engineering, but only thing that they said was grad school. And I'm like,
Right.
why couldn't you say PhD? T'Challa is supposed to be the Shuri, and if you want to make Shuri smart for the movie, fine, but have T'Challa be equally as smart and characterize him as such. But they didn't do that
Right.
because they did not want to show black men as being super genius level intelligence. Because
Right.
these both are two characters. These were two characters. All they did in the movie was fight. Tony Stark fights in movies. The Hulk fights in movies. Bruce Banner fights in movies. But they also sit there and they were going around trying to figure out the Tesseract, which is alien technology, and figuring out how to use that because they're so damn smart white men. But these two black men that are supposed to be on the same levels of intelligence as these two men, as these white men, cannot get characterized as such in the movie. And that's just an issue for me. And that's all that's all I have to say about it.
No, I agree because like a lot of the excuses that people were giving were, oh well, he had that one moment where he was talking about history, but I'm like, yeah, but anybody could have picked that up. Anybody who has a basic understanding of the transatlantic slave trade and colonialism could have said the same thing. And then like the excuse for T'Challa was, oh well, he made some vague reference to his original design of the suit.
You froze again.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so and they were trying to say, oh, well, T'Challa made some brief reference to his design of the suit, and I'm like, but that doesn't give you any indication that he's a physicist. This dude is a physicist, like,
Right?
and
PhD from Oxford in physics.
like, come on, like, and there was nothing like they didn't give, and you gave a perfect like example of what they could have done in that lab scene that could have solved all of that, like,
Right?
like,
I told you, right? I
right.
gave that example of just like all you had to do was say all you had to do was say that Shuri was taking over T'Challa's lab, and
Right,
that it originally was T'Challa's lab.
right. Problem
That's
solved.
all you really have to do. And then
Problem
have
solved.
them have some witty banter back and forth about how now she thinks that she's smarter than him.
Right. And then
All you had to
For Killmonger, that could have been a moment like a small cutscene where you could see how he like made his armor, how he like found like did his weapons, how he like I don't know, like restructured his weapons to deal with like Wakandan shit. Could have been anything. Like,
exactly anything. And then
but
people are
no.
like, "Oh well, wait for the director's cut," which I very well believe that some of that stuff might be in the director's cut.
And I hope it is.
The first cut of the movie is like 3.5 hours long, so I can't wait for the director's cut, honestly. But that don't matter. It wasn't in the final cut of the movie.
Right.
like, like you have to understand that if if the scenes that showed the black men being intelligent were what made the cutting room floor for pacing or timing or anything else, I just sit there and think about me as being Ryan Coogler in that movie and be like, look, we got to figure out a way around this. If we need to do reshoots or whatever, but these men need to be portrayed as the geniuses that they are. Point blank. Period. I don't care. I'm the director of this movie.
Right. I mean, honestly. I mean, and I know, let's keep it all the way 100. We know the angle and the orientation he was trying to like go based on how the movie ended up. Like we know the focus was on black women, even though it's about Black Panther. This is his comic. He
Oh
oriented
yeah, it
way
was
to
about
where it
black
could be
women.
right. Like honestly, if we just being 100,
It was about black women,
like
and it was about not offending white people.
right,
Also trying to give. Sorry to say this, and this is going to sound classist, and I'm sorry, but I can't think of another way to say it. But just kind of basic white people. I mean, basic black people. Um, some representation porn.
right. Oh yeah, like we have a image of like these warriors and like we have images of Shuri and stuff and they're darker skinned, so that's great for representation. And I'm like, cool. I mean, it's purely on the basis of representation. That's great. But if we're seriously talking about like consistency with the characters, like, and we're talking about, I mean, shit, if we're talking about representation, it didn't even fully achieve that goal, like on a complete scale. Because look at again, like you said, look at how black males were viewed. All of them were just fighting when clearly you had two geniuses, And then like I don't know, like so even on the representational like aspect, it only did half the job.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll see with this director's
Uh,
cut.
yeah, we're going kind of long here, so we
Yeah,
got to cut it. So we won't even get into how they dogged out Black Americans, but you know,
that's for us. Yeah, there's
we
plenty of
might
think
have to do
pieces out there.
a part two of this.
Possibly. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and sign off. This was just a little bit of our thoughts from Nomics on Black Panther, and we will catch y'all later. Deuces.
Deuces.